friends. Welcome to Shine Bright, Speak Truth, the podcast where we explore how to shine the light of Jesus in our lives and speak boldly in a world that desperately needs God's truth. I'm your host, Tiffany Shea.
Today's episode's a little different than what I had planned to discuss originally, but I couldn't let the week pass without talking about Hurricane Helene and the tragic loss endured across the 4 states of Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina. And today, as I publish this, we're 7 days post-storm, and I'm all over the place, literally, in a physical sense, as I went to stay with friends in Nashville after 4 days of no power and water. And of course, like most people, I'm all over the place emotionally. And I'm pretty committed to being transparent on this podcast, so no editing happens. I usually just leave all the ums and the stumbling over the words, and that's where I'm at today. I haven't put a lot of preparation into this with an outline so that I can stay on task. So I apologize in advance if I'm everywhere. But this is just all the things my heart has experienced this week. A little personal context: I was born and raised in Florida, so hurricanes and the damage they cause is not really foreign to me. And because I have sat through hurricanes, I leave always, regardless if it's a category 1 or a category 4. But this one though, it snuck up on me, as I think it did most, honestly. And there was a shift in its path. So these things are obviously really hard to predict. And I'm sure the forthcoming days is going to bring out a lot of more information. But, just in comparison to Hurricane Katrina, I think the last thing I saw was that it was actually double the size. So it's really not a shock in the sheer vastness of devastation that we're seeing, especially as more and more information emerges as they arrive in the mountains of the Carolinas. So all the storms I've experienced and been through, I always notice one thing. Over the last week, in person and in social media, which I really did try to stay off the roads and out of the public places, I have watched this storm bring out the best in people and the worst in people. And so today I want to talk about giving people the benefit of the doubt. As I mentioned in my last episode, I'm a little bit of a word nerd, and so of course I Googled the meaning of benefit of the doubt. And the definition is, it means to believe something good about someone rather than something bad, when you have the possibility of doing either. And there was another one that says to trust someone even though you're not certain about the truth. And so I think there's a lot of information on social media about the lack of support with FEMA, or the lack of support with the government, or lack of support in the community, or the first responders. And I don't know what's true, right? And I don't think we will know what's true until we've experienced it personally, and we can say this happened to me, or this happened or did not happen to me. But I think when we experience great loss and devastation, people have a vast array of emotions. And for those who don't have their hope in Jesus, sometimes it can turn volatile. As I mentioned, I've witnessed it this past week. But as Christ followers, we can't control what happens with other people, for sure. But as Christ followers, we can guard our hearts and in moments like this, because the fear and the panic is real. And yes, we can have faith that God will see us through. But if we don't allow ourselves to feel the fear, the very emotions that God designed us with, we're only stuffing it down, and we can't allow God, or really even any other people, to minister to us because we're not willing to go there. But I think it's God's desire to minister to us in moments like this. And as I was driving away, I mentioned earlier I left on day 4. It was me and 2 dogs, and the heat wasn't doing good things for my brain. I wasn't making good decisions. I was isolated alone, and yes, you have friends and they check on you, and I'm grateful for all of those things. But I had to get out. There was something in me that was just like, I've got to go. I got to get out of this place because I can't think right. So anyway, I started driving. I couldn't go north. I had to go south to get gas, and I headed towards Nashville. I have some friends that moved here about 6 months ago or so. And so I was very grateful that I had a place to go. And me and the dogs, we packed it up, we left. But as I stopped about an hour and a half outside of where I live to get gas, I lost it. I started crying. And the thing that set me off at that moment was I saw, people with trailers filling up gas cans and had generators. And I talked to a few of them and, they're like, we're going in. We don't know what to expect. And we just want to help. And so, those are the people that it's easiest to give the benefit of the doubt to, right? And so I started crying and I drove a little bit further and I stopped and I actually got a hot dog and it was the best meal I'd had, I was like, wow, this is a great hot dog. But as I drove away from the devastation to respite, I don't know why I was crying. And, all I really lost nothing in the grand scheme of things. My fence snapped and fell over and patio furniture flipped. So why was I crying? That was it. That's all, And then as I've talked and I've been thinking and praying, I felt guilt. I felt guilty for giving in after just a few days and going somewhere else. And then I started thinking about other people and their fear and their panic. And in situations like that, it's like we experience panic when we think about losing touch with our loved ones without power to our phones. Or there's panic for the essential employees who don't know if they'll have access to gas. And they still have to show up at the hospital to work in the midst of their own personal tragedies. There might be moms who panic as they go into their third or fourth day without power and water, fearing, her kids are going to go hungry because payday and grocery day didn't fall before the storm. And it might be something like the homeowner who's standing in 2 feet of water in the only home they've ever known as they look around and play back all the experiences and memories of their entire life. And so, of course, that brought me to the deeper devastation that sits more north in the Carolina mountains. They're so desperate for help. But, and this gets me, it's actually not what you might think. Yeah, they need the water and they need the food and they want power and cell service, to let their loved ones know they made it. But in the grand scheme of things, they want body bags more than anything. Sorry. Because the stench of death is so great. And they're desperate to give dignity back to the bodies who were slung into the floods and carried away from their loved ones. And then I stop and I think, how can I even want anything when that's not my situation? And how can I feel inconvenienced, that I couldn't flush my toilet when I'm still alive? And how can I run from such a small problem as no power and water when people everywhere else are dealing with excruciating devastation and pain? And as I'm praying over the last few days and things like that, I just hear God speak and say, it all matters. The little things matter as much as the big things. He cares about the ones without power, but he also cares about the death and pain of those that are in the mountains. If you're struggling, he cares. And there's always going to be different levels of loss. And just like all sin is equal, I feel like there's not a comparison with loss. All pain is equal to God. Everyone who's experienced loss matters to God, and he wants to meet you where you are, in your pain, in your fear, in your anxiety, and in your needs. And I think it's hard in situations like this to remember none of the stuff we lost matters eternally. We can't take it to heaven anyway. But there are many people who watch their children, their husband, their wife, or their parents slip away in the waters or had trees fall on the bed where they slept. And God received those believers into a place that we can only hope to be one day. So if you lost a non-believer, my heart breaks for you. And I think you can turn that brokenness into an urgency to share the gospel, because that has to outweigh everything. with each new disaster, we'll continue to lose. But there really is nothing greater than the souls who didn't reunite with Jesus this past week. So, getting back to giving people the benefit of the doubt. When you see someone lashing out, being angry at each other, cutting in line at the grocery or gas line because they feel like their need is the most important. Maybe they're cussing out a first responder, or they're just mad that the help didn't get there fast enough. We have to remember what's important, and that's pointing them back to God, because nothing else matters. So if you lost less than the person next to you, okay, go hold a mom or dad who lost their baby, or hold a baby whose parent died saving them. Or maybe you should go feed an elderly neighbor who doesn't drive or depends on home care, someone to deliver meals to them to eat. Just do what Jesus do. Love people, have compassion, give what you can, serve selflessly, because we're all in this together. And even when we aren't experiencing tragedy and devastation, we need each other. Life is hard even on the easy days. Let's be real. So go be the hands and feet of Jesus. But when you're done serving selflessly, come home and let Jesus minister to you. Because your loss counts, and you need that love too. And while you can serve while you're hurting, you've got to allow time for God to come in and heal your heart and hear your pain and love you in the midst of your struggle. So if you're struggling today and you need prayer, you can email me. I'll drop my email address in the caption below. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, even in the midst of my own tears and feelings. And there's been a lot the last few days, but I have room for you to sit next to me. And even if you just need company and silence, to process what you've been through, even if it has nothing to do with the hurricane, maybe you're just dealing with loss in general, you have a friend here, and, I would love to pray with you or just love on you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Shine Bright, Speak Truth. If this episode sparks something in your heart, share it with someone who may need it too. And don't forget to subscribe so you can be notified of new episodes as we continue to dive into more truth-filled conversations. I'm committed to shining bright and speaking truth. I hope you are too.